it's Drybear. A lot has happened for the First Descendant in the last 2 weeks, but the most important to talk about right now is going to be the dev Q&A that's been going on over the weekend. So let's get caught up on everything that's been said. Now, the first one that, at least for me, is the most important, aside from other like general news, is the fact that they are going to be doing the ultimate, like normal character to ultimate transfer for the Descendants. And this has been a big topic of discussion. It's a system that they adopted from Warframe, and that you have normal characters and you have ultimate characters, and these Descendants will have a slight increase in their effectiveness. Their stats are slightly increased in many cases, and they also have access to new modules. However, even though it does work for Warframe, it obviously hasn't really been holding up well in the First Descendant. And so there's been a lot of talk around being able to transfer your progress from your normal Descendants to your ultimate Descendants. That is, take your catalysts and your activator and move it on to an ultimate Descendant, so you don't have to re-spend that ahead of time. And it also kind of helps with the normal process of releasing Descendants. We get normal Descendants that come out like Inez or like Keelan, if anyone still plays Keelan, and Haley. And obviously people are hesitant to invest in those characters if they know that it's just going to be work they have to do over again in order to get that ultimate Descendant set up. So they have confirmed in the Q&A that the crystallization catalysts and energy activators, all of them. We were wondering if this is going to be a limited process. You can only transfer a couple or something like that. But they have confirmed in the Q&A that all catalysts and all activators used on a regular Descendant will be transferred to the ultimate Descendant when this system goes live later this year. So that is a huge gain. It means that one for one, whatever your normal Descendant has, the ultimate Descendant will take that and gain it, which means that you don't have to worry about investing in normal Descendants, and everything should be good to go. This next one is a big one, and I think it is a good stopping point in the life cycle of TFD to discuss this, because obviously it came out in July, June last year. So we've had some time to look at this, but let's look at what the topic at hand actually is. They've mentioned that there are still balancing issues between characters and their efficiency. I mean, essentially, if you need to do something with guns, you run Glay or Enzo. If you need to do something with abilities, you run like Freyna or Bunny or Inez, and that's pretty much it. You can still run the other characters. They're just going to be notably worse in almost every other possible category compared to those main ones. So they say, yes, we consider this a long-term goal that they want to achieve, having more diverse content and more Descendants that are good at certain things and having that hit. However, they've been experimenting with that with tons of different approaches, but unfortunately, aside from hunting missions and intercept battles, no other content has been widely accepted by players. Previously, we attempted to increase content variety by strictly matching certain Descendants with specific content, but this received negative feedback. Moving forward, we plan to expand content types in a more inclusive way, allowing all Descendants to participate while making certain ones more advantageous in specific scenarios. And to improve the viability of support-type Descendants, we believe that enhancing their combat abilities will make them more effective in high-difficulty content. Currently, the buffing ability of support characters do not compensate enough for the raw damage output of other characters, making DPS choices more favorable in party compositions. During the upcoming Descendant balance up adjustments, we believe this gap will be narrowed to some extent. Now, my personal perspective on this, as a gamer and a consumer, but also as someone who worked in game design for many, many years, is that I think this is the absolute wrong direction to go. And I think this is essentially them admitting defeat. What they're saying here is that they can't find a way to make it so specific skill sets are useful and accepted by the player base, and they can't find a way for support characters to matter enough for anything to work. And so they're just going to make the support characters do more damage and be better at clearing so that they can be just like everybody else. I think that this is something that can actually, I think if they actually had some very experienced game designers, they could solve this problem, but it seems like they are just trying over and over and over and can't seem to get it, and they're just going to, in some way, homogenize some of the gameplay here. Now, is this at the end of the world if Luna can clear as well as Inez, and you can get Yujin clearing as well as Inez, and everyone's Inez and all of that? It's not the end of the world. It is certainly a bummer, because I think there's a lot of variety in gameplay that they could really create and things that they could accomplish with different style characters. But it sounds like their goal is just to make sure that every character feels good and is comparable, and they're just going to keep making new content and cool characters and hope things work out in the interim, which I'm not sure, that for a short term, that'll work, but I wonder in a year or 2 or 3 if that's going to just start making every character feel the same, and it's going to start lining everything up really well. Now, they can create some very special passives. Warframe does this where like certain characters get a higher drop chance on certain items, or certain characters have the ability to interact with certain mission types, you know, like being able to stealth through spy missions and things like that. I think they can still follow this path, but let me know what you think about the variety of content and also the availability of certain characters and how they're fitting into the meta, and also how you think they're managing to approach this problem over the last 6 to 8 months of trying to figure out how they're going to solve it and how they're going to implement it going forward. Next up, there was a comment in the Q&A around the non-grapple based sub-modules. So the sub-modules, pretty much everyone uses grapple modules in general, but there's a whole bunch of blue modules that focus on getting different kinds of melee attacks in general, and they kind of address this here. They say, since the auxiliary attack modules struggle to compete with grappling modules for slot priority, we have set the improvement of these modules as a lower priority. So however, as many players have expressed interest in melee combat, we are considering it as a separate content feature, and they have mentioned that they do eventually want to do melee combat, but it sounds like they're just kind of, laying down the sword on this one, just saying, well, the blue sub-modules just suck. No one's going to use them. We're not going to improve them. For now, we'll just leave them as is, and everyone will just use the grapple there. So it looks like they're not planning to do any major improvements to that in the short term. There was also a comment specifically around Void Vessels having some alternate routes and stuff, and they were asking, can we get more varied maps and more random maps to make the tile loadouts and the systems feel a lot more fresh? They responded with, a fully random map system presents significant design and technical challenges, which depending on how it's implemented, that is absolutely true. So they don't have plans to implement a random map system, and it does not align well with the current level design style of TFD. Since the game requires player to repeat missions for fun, we plan to do some level of randomness in missions, similar to the Void Vessel, to reduce monotony. The Sigma Sector mission in Season 2, Episode 2 has also incorporated this kind of random design. Personally, I don't think that the variety in the Void Vessel is all that successful, just because it ends up in the same main hubs anyways. It's just the connecting paths that change sometimes, but it's better than nothing, and it kind of does. I think as they continue to add more content, like, you know, in a year or 2 from now, if they have a lot of alternate game modes and a lot of different things to do, the variety will matter less, just because you have so many different activities. But it would be nice to see more like tile set variety, like to a much broader degree than we see in the Void Vessels right now, where it just feels like sometimes the connecting paths between the major hub areas is slightly different. For the most part, it is all still the same. They also were asked about being able to diminish or reduce other players' skill animations, and the answer is no. They don't plan to have any adjustments to other players' skill animations. I think this came off of the recent update that allows you to just hide explosive effects, like the VFX from explosions. This was a huge change because for a while, you know, when the game first came out, a lot of people were running Vestigial Organ with Glay, which just filled the screen with VFX. And now, since Restored Relic got buffed and people are using it for the new Void Erosion, we have the same explosive problem where there's VFX everywhere. So they added an option to be able to hide or reduce explosion of VFX. And people are asking, hey, can we get this for skill effects as well, just to make the screen clearer? They say that they're not going to do this for skill, but they're going to keep it in for explosions on the weapons themselves. They also have mentioned that they don't, at least in the short term, plan to implement gifting caliber to other people or any trade systems in general. So any of that kind of stuff, they said that they would like to do it, but they're not planning on doing it anytime soon, so don't hold your breath. They said once they get this next patch coming out, which again, they have extended the seasonal structure for the game. So Season 2, Episode 2, which is coming out in a couple weeks now, is going to be a point for them. Once they get that out and they're done and it's behind them, they're going to start looking at the character balance overall. So they're going to be looking at getting just a balance review in for the game, and they will be looking at Luna in general just to see where she stands after all the changes that they've been doing. They also mentioned that displaying having end of match numbers is not something they want to support. They actually don't mention the possibility of toxicity. If you look at any online game that has numbers like this, sometimes the devs will take a stance where they don't want to encourage toxicity. Final Fantasy XIV, Lost Ark are very adamant about these being bad systems for the game. So they mention that they're not going to be, they don't mention that at all, but they do mention that they don't have any modes right now that are competitive enough for them to display numbers based on player performance at the end of the match. However, if we introduce content that involves player competition in the future, they may consider having like a final, you get to the end of it and you see who did how much damage and whatnot. Next, they are releasing a new area, Sigma Sector, with the new Descendant as well, and they're making sure that the new Flying Descendant, Serena, does well, but they also mentioned that they want to make sure that any Descendant can get anywhere. You don't have to be Serena to reach high up cliffs or collect special, chests that only she can reach, so anyone can reach it, but we'll see kind of the effect of the new Flying Descendant. They had to put in, essentially, any Descendant can fly right now. If you get the grapple cooldown on your weapon with a core and do the infinite grapple setup, or if you're like Keelan with the right setup, you can just fly forever. So we'll see how this actually affects things with a character that by default can fly unmodded, and then depending on what mods she has, might make it even more interesting. But they do mention that the new field will be a little bit different in its layout, hopefully unique enough to really stand out against the others, and hopefully not, as crazy as the layouts of like Hatchery in White Knight Gulch, but enough to kind of really make things interesting. But they said that they're not going to be like, they want to make sure that the Flying Serena feels good, but it isn't something that only she can accomplish, as anyone else can reach the places that she can. I think that's a good place to pause for now. We have some things to catch up now that I'm back on the content train and we're back in the office, so to say. So we gotta get caught up on some of the other things going on, but that's kind of where the Q&A is. We'll catch up with the rest of the Q&A in a separate video, but let me know what you think about the current state of TFD down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.